you let me love you forever, forever? I wanna love you. Will you let me love you forever, forever and a day, 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 day.
Happy Taco Tuesday! I cannot believe that it's almost Christmas. Like, tomorrow's December. I have no Christmas anything going on. I can't believe it's December. How are y'all doing? How's everyone doing? I wanted to talk about a couple of things. We're going to do some housework, because I need to do some housework. We're going to do some housekeeping, and we'll get into the 2 episodes, Breaking Bread and Truth Be Told. I have to first say, the family Chantel is quickly becoming one of my favorite 90-day spinoffs. These episodes are getting better and better, and I just feel like season 3 is on point. So housekeeping. Wherever you're watching, you hit that thumbs up. That'd be great. Very helpful. Support the show. Bottom of the screen, you'll see it scrolling where you can support this show so that we can continue to do these shows for you. Shout out to all my Patreon subscribers. I appreciate you guys so much. Without you, this wouldn't be a thing. And I am proud to bring you all the news and gossip, all the cast interviews, all the things. So I appreciate you guys. You know who you are. The Donna's over there at Anchor FM. I appreciate you as well. Geek Girl and the Amandas. I like saying that, the Amandas. Jaleesa, Dr. Jaleesa, I miss you. I hope you're at our holiday party. Angela, C. Cruz, Raydella's, Crystals, all those people. Love you guys so much. Can I ask you guys a question? Totally has nothing to do with family Chantel. Has anyone had, I'm going to show you. Oh, wait. I don't know if I can show you. I'm going to try to show you. I have these like rough elbows all of a sudden, and I keep putting shea butter on them, but they're like all rough, and it's so weird, and it's just my elbows. Anyone ever have that problem? If so, tell me how to fix it, because it's weird. It's like, it feels like an alligator or a crocodile. Just on my elbow. It's weird, right? Anyhow, let's get into Breaking Bad. So we're doing 2 episodes today, all in one. Pedro's packing for the Dominican Republic. He's messing around with Chantel, which I think is hilarious. He's got this jock strap, and he's telling her it's a face mask because, the pandemic. And he like puts it on her face, starts laughing. And I thought it was hilarious. Like, clearly, olive oil or coconut oil. Yeah, shea butter. So I'm going to mix shea butter and olive oil. I think that will work, Christine. Thank you for that. So Pedro is really on this mission about finding out about his family and his history and his family dynamics, right? So he wants to meet his brothers. He's really worried that they won't want to meet him. They won't want to have anything to do with him. They'll consider him the bastard child. And he's concerned because, all these years, he's in his late 20s. They never looked for him. And he's like, I don't know them. They don't know me. And we've never been a family, and no one's ever cared. But I have a feeling, you guys, that the brothers don't know he exists because the father never claimed him, nor Nicole. He probably didn't say, I have this child over here and this child over here. And as I think about it, maybe there are others. Maybe there are other side chicks that he had kids with, because clearly that is the thing that he did, right? So can you imagine if Pedro actually has like half brother and sisters elsewhere besides the 3 that he knows about? It's kind of crazy, and it's kind of sad, and I have to tell you, I was all in my feelings, especially in this latest episode, which we'll talk about as well. And he's like, I don't know them, they don't know me. Hey Patty, hey girl, hey Angelica, hey Faith. I feel sad for him. And so Chantel's like, are you nervous to meet your dad? And he's like, yeah, I am, because I don't know him, and he's never been there for me, and he's never really even looked for me now that I'm an adult. And then she also asked, does Nicole want to find him too? And Pedro's like, oh, Nicole's emotional right now. She doesn't know, and he thinks she's emotional over Alejandro, but like, She's emotional right now. Does that mean she can't think, Pedro? Does it? And so Chantel also asked, do you think your dad's going to acknowledge that you're his son? And that, you could tell, really like hit his heart. Like he doesn't know if that's going to be the case. And he doesn't even know if Nicole wants to join him and do that, because Nicole and him have their own problems, right? They're fighting as it is, but he wants them to unite as a family, find out about their family history, find out about why the dad's never been there for, hey, Stevie, find out why the dad's never been there for them. And this whole situation. Now, I want to say I told you so, you guys, but I'm not going to say I told you so. But I knew, Lydia knew what the situation was. I knew she was a side chick. She just didn't want to talk about it because she's embarrassed about it. And I find her whole demeanor about this really unfortunate. And I find it unfortunate, you guys, because there's trauma there. Those kids have trauma, and we'll talk about that as well. And she doesn't want to acknowledge it. She wants to brush it under the rug and act like it's not a big deal. Your children are telling you that it's a big deal. And for 3 seasons, we've only seen Pedro stick up for you, almost to the detriment of his own relationship and own marriage. And you won't acknowledge his feelings, and you won't acknowledge his questions, and you won't say, hey, you know what? This is something that, let's sit down and talk about it as a family so that you can understand your dynamics. Because I got to tell you that this is common in a lot of cultures. This is not unfamiliar territory. There are people that don't know their parents or one of their parents, and they want to know. And I think that it's okay to ask the questions. And I don't ever think that should be considered a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? I feel like Lydia needs to put her pride aside, and the fact that she was hoeing it around and making decisions on, material things and what she wanted to do. And she wanted her Insta family, and she got it. Hey, Crystal. Hey, she got it. And I don't think that it's okay for her to then now not want to be judged on the decisions that she made. Now, granted, that being said, I get that, when you're an adult and you realize that when you were a kid, you were growing up, but you're also seeing your parents grow up, especially if they were young when they had you. So there's that part too, right? So I think that Lydia, as an older lady now, is thinking about some of the decisions that she made, but it still doesn't make it okay for her to act like her children's feelings are not important, and that the decisions that she made were like no big deal. Anyways, on that note, let's move on to River. So River, we meet his friend Kenny, and Kenny's been in this long-term relationship, and River wants some advice from his friend because his friend's been in this relationship. Hey, Michelle. Hey, girl. Hey. For like many years, right? And River's like, you know what? All I want to do right now in my life is run towards happiness this year. And he says that Megan makes him happy. And Megan is making him change some of his lifestyle choices. So he's eating healthy. He says he's eating pears, which I thought was such a random thing to say. I'm eating pears now. And grilled chicken and brown rice. I'm like, pears, grilled chicken, and brown rice. Okay. I mean, all of those things separately sound healthy. And Kenny, his friend's like, I've never seen you this happy. I've never seen you talk about a girl like this. And River just wants to be in a relationship that's healthy and happy and brings him happiness. And I think that he deserves that. And I think that that's a great thing. And so he wants Megan to be part of his family. He wants Megan to be able to do some of the things that Kenny and his girlfriend do, where like the girlfriend and the mom get their nails done, the spa day and the dinners and all the stuff. And I was like, River, do you know your family? Because I know you know your family, because we know your family. And I mean, I don't know if those are going to be things that happen, but let's run towards the happiness. And so he asked Kenny, anytime that you were in a relationship, did it ever affect your relationship with your family? Because as we know, with all the relationships with the kids, with Pedro and Chantel, now Winter and Jaw, and Royal and Anjanette, there's always been something, and it's always affected the relationship with the family. So he wanted to know if that was a thing. And Kenny was like, yeah, no, that doesn't really happen in my family. And I'm like, River, you know your family, and you're the youngest, so you've seen it over and over and over again. You have to have learned from the lessons of your older siblings, so you should really know how to maneuver this family. And I think that he does, you guys. I think that he's maneuvering it quite well. He knows just enough to give them and just enough to hold back. And I think that he's going to be just fine. So he tells his friend that her friends gave him a hard time, and he wants it to go smoother when he introduces her to his family. Now, I already told you guys how I felt about her friends. First of all, I think her friends are way older than 28, 29, in my opinion. And I feel like they bombarded him with questions that were none of their damn business. I didn't like the fact that they were touching his face and touching his hair and all the things. I personally think that the one friend, I think her name was Becky or whatever, was into him because she was the one that was like, oh, remember she said that she likes cake but not icing, that one. And the one that was like all over him, I think that she had a little like, hey, if Megan doesn't work out, I'm here. That vibe. That's the vibe she gave me, at least. So, he is looking forward to introducing the first girl. And you guys have to remember that he's never brought a girl home ever for the family to meet. So this is kind of a big deal. So he thinks, it's his turn to face the music, and he's ready and prepared to do that. And then we go over to the DR, and Nicole and Pedro are in a bad place, but he wants to make everything better for the sake of his family. And so she picks him up from the airport. He's like, oh my God, my sister looks totally different. I don't even recognize her. She used to have braces. Now she has no braces. She used to not have boobs. Now she has boobs. And ever since she's been with Alejandro, she's changed a lot. And not only physically, but her mindset has changed. And the way she speaks has changed. And I hardly recognize her. And I was like, well, she's young. So she is developing who she is. That cannot necessarily be a bad thing, right? She's finding out who she is, and she's trying to come into her own. And I think that we all go through that to some degree, right? Especially when we're quite young. We like try to figure it out. We change. Like, you guys, can I just tell you something? So on my personal page, and if you guys aren't following me there, let me put this up. So on my personal page on Instagram, I cover celebrity interviews, and I like post some random stuff. So Megan Thee Stallion has bangs now. Okay. Hey, C Cruz, she has bangs, and they look fire. And I was like, oh, I think I want bangs now. Do you know how many people hit me up and just was like, no, that's a bad idea. You're going to regret it. Woo, woo, woo. And I tell you guys all this because I'm telling you, like, Nicole's like trying new styles, right? And she's like trying makeups, and she's like coming to her own. I'm obviously not 20, but like, I want bangs. These Megan Thee Stallion bangs, if you haven't seen them, they're fire, you guys. They're like right here. And everyone is like naysaying it. They're like, you're gonna regret it, you're gonna hate it. But I think it might be a good look. I digress. So Pedro and Nicole are coming back from the airport. He thinks that he can hardly recognize her. And Nicole is feeling a little like angst towards him. And it's like, oh, did you come here so that you and mommy can gossip about me and Alejandro? And, you guys are keep pretending that Alejandro is the worst person ever, but he's not. And I've never known him to be violent. You're the one that completely started this fight. And, you're the one that fights all the time. And then she references the fight that he did have, though. Pedro did have a physical fight with River back in season 1, if you guys remember that. So I don't know who's necessarily the instigator, but we haven't seen it from Alejandro. We have seen it from Pedro a couple of times. So C. Cruz says, I've had bangs since I was 14. I've never changed my hairstyle since then. And Dasher says, try it. I think you looked cute. See, you guys, I have 2 people on my side versus like the thousands that said no. So Pedro's just really pissed off that this is what they're pissed off about, which I still don't really understand to this day. So Pedro and Lydia are pissed off that Nicole went to New York and then got stuck in New York in the height of the pandemic and could not travel, and therefore left Lydia on her own. And I keep saying Lydia's a grown-ass woman. Nicole is not a child anymore. She's a woman in and of herself. So she should be able to do what she wants to do as a young woman. And I think Lydia should be able to stand on her own 2 feet. And I've said this before and I say it again. They want her, and her meaning Nicole, to always just be at Lydia's beck and call, which is not her position and is not her job. Yes, that's your mom and you're going to take care of your mom, but you also have to live your own life. And I said this before too, where, previously Pedro had the idea that he's going to bring his entire family, meaning Nicole and Lydia, to America, and that they're going to live in the basement with Chantel and himself. And I was like, well, at some point, Nicole is going to want to have her own life, her own family, and that should be okay. Like, you guys are not considering that. And Nicole even says that, like, they treat her like she's still a little girl, and she's not. Hey, Vanessa, hey. Vanessa says, they have bang clip-ins. You can try it. See how you like it before you cut. Facts. Someone actually sent me a video that you can put your hair in a ponytail, and I'm going to try that I'm going to try it, and I'll show you guys, and you guys can tell me what you think. Pedro really thinks that Alejandro is the reason why their family is having all these problems right now. And Nicole is just like tired of it. She's tired of Pedro. She's tired of Lydia. She's like, I'm not asking for their opinions. I'm not a little girl anymore. I don't need you guys to tell me how to live my life. Then they're all sitting in the living room. Now, here's where I know, like, Pedro's a little bit of an exaggerator. He can tell a great story, and I think it's hilarious. So he is sitting there, and he's yelling at Nicole and telling Lydia all the things that happened in New York with Alejandro, the fight that they had, the gift that he gave, and all the things. And then he turns to his mom and says that Alejandro called her a bitch, a damn dirty bitch, in front of me. I was like, I watched that episode. He did not say that. He did not say that you were a damn dirty bitch. Although that's really funny of you to say and like come up with. He said that they were basically trash, right? But he didn't say that she was a damn dirty bitch. And Nicole's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it either too, Pedro. I think you kind of like lost in translation somewhere there, which I think is hilarious. And then Nicole just says, you just feel ill will towards him. And he's like, no, he's just not a good guy. He's got a wife. He's got a girlfriend. He's flirting with other women. Like, how do you want to be with someone who doesn't even respect you like that? Which, if you guys think about, is playing into everything that is developing right now in the storyline, right? So Pedro clearly has some values that he believes in. And he thinks that, cheating and extramarital and all those things are wrong. And he's trying to explain that to Lydia and to Nicole that it's not okay. Meanwhile, he still has yet, because we're not on the episode yet, he still doesn't realize or hasn't come to terms with the fact that his whole family is from a line of people that have been unfaithful or have been with people that have been unfaithful. So it's something that's very hard for him to deal with, for real. So he goes on to say, if Alejandro is a cheater once and he does it once, he'll do it again and again. And why would you be giving him another chance? Are you blind? Are you stupid? He says all of these things to Nicole. And he says to camera, I just want get my family back on track, which again plays into this whole storyline because he wants everything to be good with his sister and his mom. He wants to find out about his dad and why his dad abandoned him. He wants to find out about the cousins and the brothers and all of that stuff. And meanwhile, he just got in a good place with his in-laws and his wife, right? So he's just trying to find a happy place in the dynamics of all of his family relationships. And I think that at some point we kind of all go through that a little bit, Patty says, yes, Pedro's probably retelling the roundhouse kick that flattened Alejandro's iguana. That's hilarious. And Crystal says, when he says, where did I come from? Man, that broke my heart a bit. Please stay the same, Pedro. And Alejandro, why I keep saying Alejandro. Angelica says, the version of that fight keeps on changing every time Pedro retells it. Facts. So, Nicole gets really upset, and Nicole's like, you practically have a failed marriage, and Lydia had a relationship with our dad that you can't even call a relationship. So neither of them are an example of anything, and neither of them should be giving me any type of advice. And you guys, she's not wrong. She's not wrong, right? Pedro has become a great husband, right? But he went through some things with the family Chantel, and we're now learning a lot more about Lydia. So I'm kind of in agreement with Nicole, where you got to let her learn her own lessons and live her own life and make her own decisions, because everyone else around her has done that. So why should she not be able? Now, I understand trying to protect her because you love her and that's your family, but protecting someone is different than controlling them. They're very separate things. So now we're over at Winter and Jaw's house. Okay. Now, I think, okay, wait a minute. I think I took a picture. I might not have, but let me check real quick. So anyways, this was one of my favorite scenes ever, of this show. It was so funny to me. And I just absolutely love Mama Karen. Oh, I did take a picture. See how organized I am sometimes? Okay, so let me get this up real quick. Okay, so let me keep that up there for a minute. So Jaw and Winter are going to celebrate the Sabbath, and they've invited over the family Chantel. And I still am not very clear about, I think it's called Nazarene, and what he exactly practices and what his beliefs are. But we do know that every Friday to Saturday, they celebrate from sundown to sundown the Sabbath. Every week. And so they invite the family Chantel over because they're going to also announce their engagement. I thought it was funny because when they were sitting on the couch, and Winter's like, I don't know, how we're going to do it. Not sure what we should say or how we do it. What do you think, Jaw? And she's like, do you want to surprise them? And Jaw's like, yeah, I think they like surprises. But he did it deadpan, knowing that he's being 100% sarcastic, and knowing the fact that they don't like surprises in that family. They like to be in everyone's business and know everyone's business. So he knew exactly what he was saying. So they start walking in. And here's the thing that's super funny, you guys, to me. They were walking in like they were going somewhere camping or somewhere on a voyage, the way they're walking to the house. Now, the house was something else, because I've been watching and following a lot of these container homes. Have any of you guys heard of these container homes? That they're containers that they build into these beautiful homes. And I was wondering if this was one of them. Like, is this a container home? Because it kind of looks like one to me. So that I just thought was a very interesting thing. So they get there, and Karen, oh, Mother Karen, I love you so. Karen's wearing a white hat. She's wearing these white gloves, and she's walking in like, where am I? Right? And she's like, I just hope that John Winter will learn from my example, that just because, we don't have the same religious beliefs, doesn't mean that we can't come together. And I was like, you know what? That's so agreeable. I absolutely agree with Mama Karen with that. Like, we don't have to have the same beliefs, but it doesn't mean that we can't be family or can't be friends and can't celebrate each other and learn from each other. And so, so Karen comes in. Now, Ja and Winter have this unleavened bread and this one bottle of, it looked like moonshine to me, like just it looked like homemade wine, but whatever. Those big bottles of wine, like I don't know if even they make them still, but like I don't know, they're like $2.99 and they're big bottles. They're just never like top quality wine, in my opinion. I mean, whatever, wine is wine, I suppose. But that's what they were serving to begin with, right? Because that's part of their Sabbath. Now, Karen comes in, and Thomas, the gentleman that he is, he gets up and he's like, "Can I take your coat?" And I was like, I get that their dynamic too. Like, Thomas might not say anything, but he's like the silent Bob, I think it is. Silent Bob. He's silent Tom, but he pays attention. Hey, Rodella, hey. He pays attention to everything that's going on. He's just one of those people, right? So he takes her coat, and okay, let me get into character, because this was my favorite part. I watched it like 3 times. So Karen says to camera, since she thought she might be going into an environment that she suspected was going to be filled with a lot of BS, she has created her own fashion line, and she's calling her fashion line BSR. And in the beginning, I was like, BSR, what is that? Fashion line. And then in my mind, I was going like a million miles a minute, like, what does having a fashion line have to do with anything? Why are you announcing a fashion line now? Like, all of those things. And then she said the name of it, bullshit repellent. She wore her bullshit hat. Wait, she wore her bullshit gloves, her bullshit hat, and this is what she said. Okay, wait. She's like this. I wore my bullshit hat, my bullshit gloves, and I brought my bullshit repellent. I died. My bullshit gloves, my bullshit hat, and my bullshit repellent. And not only did she do that, when she was like, my bullshit repellent, then she was like, shh. She went on to say that it was very important that she protected herself. Little did she know that she was absolutely right, because Ja was going to come with some bullshit in the next episode. I died, y'all. I died. I was like, I don't know where Mama Karen comes up with these things, but I gotta tell you that she is hilarious. So she tells Ja, I'm excited about learning about your Sabbath. But she wasn't done yet. She's like, here, I present to you this gift to the host and the hostess. And Winter's like, what is this? And they're opening the box and it's an angel. And she's like, oh, what's that? And she's like, these are scones with clotted cream. Now, how random is that? First of all, I've never heard of clotted cream, and what do you put it on? And Winter's like, well, the bread symbolizes communion. It symbolizes the body of Christ. So it's very important for the Sabbath. And then Karen says, well, do we have to have a specific bread? Because why can't we use scones? I find them delicious. And then you have to remember she's still wearing these white gloves. And then she does this. And it reminded me of Austin Powers. It's so hilarious to me. I find them delicious. So Karen's like, once you try these scones, you'll never leave home without them. And she starts laughing because she knows that what she's saying is ridiculous, but it's hilarious. Hilarious. So Joss says it has to be unleavened bread. And they're both like surprised that Karen brought a Sabbath gift. They thought that that was kind of kind. And so then they were going to break bread. They break the unleavened bread. And I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed, that everyone got this big ass pieces, and Thomas's piece was like this little piece. I was like, how did Thomas get the small piece of chicken? You know, like not Kevin Hart. Who's the comedian? Not Chris Tucker. Chris Rock. Chris Rock, when he has that stand up and he talks about the big piece of chicken, and the big piece of chicken always goes to the dad. Not in this family. Thomas got the littlest piece of bread that I've ever seen. And he took a little bite of the even little piece of bread that he had. I was like, that is not going to go anywhere, Thomas. So they give thanks for the bread, and then they pour the wine and give thanks for the blood of Jesus. And River's like, oh, I'm not familiar with this. And they all give him a dirty look like, where have you been? Like, what were you doing in church? And were you just not paying attention? And then John's like, okay, well, help yourself to more wine. He serves them dinner. And Karen's like, well, help yourself to the clotted cream and scones. She was really pushing these scones and the clotted cream, and I was like, Karen is a hot mess, and I love her for it. Jaw's still feeling a little bit of resistance from the family. They're not really feeling him too much, but they're trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, which you can see in this episode. But now that I look back, it was like their radars were up, and they had a reason for their radars to be up. So I don't know, Mama Karen might be onto something. So Chantel's talking about something, and Jaw completely cuts her off, and she's like, did you just cut me off? And he ignored even that and said, look, you guys were engaged. And that's how they announced like they got engaged. And Chantel was like, oh my God, like what? They're all surprised. It was an awkward moment, awkward silence. And then Winter tried to throw River under the bus. She was like, well, River knew. And Karen, the daggers, went over to her son and was like, and you didn't tell me? Now, here's the thing that I thought was interesting. Chantel was more mad that Winter didn't tell her, but she told River. But we've seen through the episodes that Winter and River are the closest. And before, Chantel used to be closer to Royal. Right? Now Royal's out of the picture, so she's trying to like be closer to Winter, but she's not. Winter and River are very close. So I wasn't surprised that she told Winter. But I was surprised that Chantel was trying to make it about her and not about the moment, the engagement. Like, you're trying to make it so, like, they should feel bad that they didn't tell you. Well, there's a reason why they didn't tell you, Chantel. And so Winter's like, I just wanted to have a peaceful environment. I wanted to tell you guys all together. And then she explains that Jaw took her to an escape room. And then Chantel makes the joke, yeah, but you didn't escape, which is interesting because if you fast forward to this latest episode, she does escape. And thank God she escapes, because that whole situation is a hot mess that we'll talk about as well. And then I felt like Chantel and Karen were kind of making fun of the ring a little bit. She's like, is it black? Is it purple? No, it's blue. And Chantel's like, I was taken aback by this whole thing. I didn't know that it was coming. And that doesn't even look like an engagement ring. All the things. And then they ask them if they've set a date. And Winter kind of skips around that. She's like, well, I guess that's what you do. You set a date when you're engaged. And Karen goes off. She's like, do not run and get married, Winter. You need to get yourself together first. You need to reach your goals. You need to attain them first. It is not the right thing to do. I said what I said, and I mean it. And, again, looking back, it's like Mama Karen was onto something, because this whole thing with Jaw in the next episode is outrageous to me. And I have lots of thoughts about that. So Crystal says, I like the ring. It wasn't my favorite crystal. I was not a fan. I'm not a fan of it, actually. But to each their own. Whatever makes you happy, it's a symbol of your love. So if that makes you happy, cool. So Chantel turns it around again to her and says that she's hurt that Winter didn't tell her. And I was just like, it's not about you right now. This moment is not about you. Take a deep breath. Now you know. And it is what it is. And maybe, take more time to get closer to your sister so that she feels like she wants to tell you first. I don't know. Then Thomas, the man of little words, had such reason. He was the voice of reason in this moment. He's like, being engaged is a beautiful thing. And I'm happy for you, but you don't have to rush into anything. You don't have to rush into marriage. You can, achieve your goals first and get married after. And he said it so calmly. He said it like the voice of reason. And I was like, you know what? Papa Thomas may not talk a lot, but when he talks, he's the voice of reason. Crystal says, Karen got real and put the jokes aside after finding out about the engagement. Yes, she did. She got real, and she had some things to say. So then we go back to the Dominican Republic. And Pedro is telling Nicole about the cousin Nikira, how she was rubbing my face that they had a great life. They had the perfect childhood. Everything that they needed, they got. Unlike us, the dad took them to the beach. They had Christmases. They had New Year's together. And I was like, see, again, I don't really feel that that's what she was doing when they met in New York. She was just saying, hey, like, the man that you don't know is different than the man I know. And the man I know was there for us, right? So I can't, like, I'm on the fence with it. I don't think she was trying to rub it in their face or Pedro's face. I just think that she couldn't believe that there was this whole side of the family that he wasn't consistent with, like he was consistent with them. So I just thought it was interesting, because you can be talking to someone and they can be listening, but they're hearing it totally different. And I think that's what I got out of that moment. Like, Pedro took that whole moment with his cousin and meeting in New York completely different than how she probably thought what she was saying and how she was saying it to him. So he's telling Nicole all this stuff, and Nicole's like, I'm just not interested. I don't think we should look for our dad. I don't think we should look for his family. He lived his whole life without us. He doesn't care about us. She's like, I don't even know when his birthday is. He's a stranger. And with strangers, I know more about strangers than I know about him. And you could see the pain on her face, you guys. And this is why I just think it's so important to have these conversations. And this is why I think it's so important that Lydia doesn't trivialize the trauma that these two are experienced and have experienced by not having a father figure and not knowing anything about the father, and literally saying, like, I don't know when his birthday is. If you think about, and I'm not a mother, but if you think about, I think about like children, or I think about friends, or even think about even my own history, you want to know where you're from. You want to know where you came from, and you want to know about your parents. I think that that's just human nature. And I don't think that anyone should downplay it. And so I'm just super surprised that Lydia's not seeing like the mental health component of it, and how her children are hurting, and not knowing a whole side of them is probably making them feel not whole. Right. And I think it's a selfish thing personally to not allow them to have this conversation with you because you have your pride and you're like, oh, well, it's the Dominican way. Well, it doesn't have to be the Dominican way. So Nicole goes on to say, the last time she saw him, she was 14 or 15, and she unleashed on her dad. She told him he was a terrible father, a terrible man. And after that, he never returned to the house. He never returned to see them. And that was the end of it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You never take responsibility for your children ever. You treat your side chick like the side chick she is, and have kids with her, and then just the kids finally say how they feel, as a teenager with all that angst. And instead of sitting down and saying, hey, I'm sorry, and I wasn't there for you, and let me be there for you, you just disappear. It's terrible, you guys. It's really terrible. But Pedro wants the truth, and he is looking to find the truth immediately, if not sooner. So then Nicole says, her mom, Lydia, her whole life has tried to be proper. She tried to play like she was like this ideal lawyer, lived the best life, was beyond reproach. And Nicole just thinks that life played a trick on her. And she feels like Lydia felt embarrassed. She never wanted to talk about it. And she feels like her mom deceived them all these years. And she feels like she's been lied to for 26 years, which she has been. She's been lied to. Because instead of having the discussion with your children, you just keep telling them nothing, and you keep telling them it's not important, and you keep telling them that their feelings are not valid. And that is not okay to do. It's not okay to do, because guess what? Now you have a cycle, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. Lydia literally said it's a cycle as if it was okay. As if it was okay, like, whatever, it's a big deal. It's not a big deal at all, because it's a cycle. This is what we do as Dominicans. It doesn't have to be that way. On the one hand, you're yelling at your daughter for dating a married man, but yet it's okay for you to have done that, and you have no remorse, and you don't want to talk about it because it is what it is, and life is what it is, and whatever life hands you, you just go with it. That's not okay. It's not okay at all. So Pedro's sad about this whole situation. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And they're back at like bugging her about Alejandro. And she's like, oh, you think Pedro's here being the savior, but he's not the savior. And they are like making fun of him, calling him the Dominican Brad Pitt. And Lydia's like, Nicole, you need to value yourself. And she's like, listen, I value myself. You are in the exact same position. So you're not one to speak to me about anything. Let me live my life. And when she says that Pedro has a failed marriage, so don't come for me, she says, Pedro's like, oh, you're jealous of Chantel. And I was like, whoa, where's that all coming from? I hear that a lot. A lot of people compare the two because they look similar, but they don't. And people keep saying that Nicole is jealous of Chantel, and I don't think really that's the case. I think that she's just coming into her own, like I said at the top of the show. So Dasha says, do you think Lydia knew that he was married? Yes, she 100% knew. And she says that in the next episode, which we'll talk about. She 100% knew he was married and didn't care. So Nicole and Pedro have this huge fight. She walks out. He chases after her. And she's like, just leave me alone. I don't want to deal with you anymore. I don't want this. I don't want to talk about it. It's not your business. And so there's that. We get back to the Atlanta, and Mama Karen and Chantel and River are on their way to meet Megan. And River's a gentleman. He opens the door for Karen. He also asks her, have you used the restroom? Because it's going to be a little bit of a long drive. And as they're driving, Karen's like, the right woman for River is going to be honest and trusting and a listener. Oh, and did I say honest? And I laughed. And she reminds us all that it's the first girl that he's ever introduced to his family. And so she feels like this is a serious business. And then she's like having this weird conversation with Chantel. She's like, I know a lot of young people. And Chantel's like, but River's never brought over a girlfriend. He's like, but she's like, yeah, but friend girls. What, Karen? What does that have to do with anything? But I love you for it, but it kind of makes no sense. And so we go to Megan. Megan's like, I've been honest with everything about River from the beginning. And I've told him my whole story. So I'm hoping that he's told, his family my whole story. And Karen is like, there are some people that are just chocked full of nuts and they want to control people. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm just saying people in general. And I was like, oh, you're talking about Ja 100%, Karen. We all know that. We all know that. And so they're driving and asking River questions. And River's like, you guys are a lot. And I don't want you guys to scare Megan away. I just want you guys to like embrace her and be nice to her, basically. And then Chantel's like, well, what does Megan kind of look like? Because you have a type, usually like the mixed girls or the Spanish girls or someone with like long black hair, curly hair, a round face. And, Megan is none of those things. But, they do say opposites attract. But I'm going to tell you this. She's not in it for the right reason. Period. And, I did a whole expose on her on Instagram. And it made the news, and I know I'm not wrong. So I said what I said, and I'm not the only one that said it because the news picked it up. So there's that. Crystal says, this is the first chick he's brought around. They said the girls usually just come around like groupies, I guess. That's hilarious. Oh, absolutely, Stevie. Abso-friggin-lutely, she's there for the come up. She is 100% a clout chaser. I said it. I'll say it again. Listen, I can already tell you how this whole situation is going to pan out, but I don't want to burst y'all's bubble. But I will say I told you so when what I predict is going to happen does happen. All right, so we're on to Truth Be Told. Megan shows up at the restaurant. Now, here's the thing. I have been waiting for, 8 episodes for Mama Karen to confront Megan. And I don't know if you guys were, but I was completely shocked how chill they were with her and how uninterested they were. And no question, that didn't even see. Mama Karen always has all the questions. She's all up in there. And then she has her cheerleader, Karen Jr., aka Chantel, who eggs her on. And the two of them were so chill. I was shocked. I thought this was going to be an explosive moment, and it wasn't. So all they asked was how long they've been dating. And Megan's like, oh, a couple of months. And then Karen gives this like little story about how River used to be a rascal, and Chantel follows up with that. And then that's it. Then Megan mentions something about a kid, and Chantel's like, oh, you never told me Megan was a mother. And River's face was like, oh. And Megan was caught off guard that, the family didn't know much about her. And Chantel goes into this whole, being in a child's life is really important. And, if it doesn't work out, it's not really a good idea to introduce your significant other, if it hasn't been at least a year. And Megan's like, oh, I'm not into time frames. I kind of go with the flow. And whenever it feels right, then that's what I'm going to do. And then they're like, is it serious? Like, are you too serious? And Megan's like, we're taking our time. We're both in different places. We don't want to dictate what it is. And we don't want anyone else to dictate what we are based on, what you guys say. We're just kind of going with the flow, which is absolutely not the vibe that River has. River's all in. River thinks that that's his woman. River thinks that they're going to be together for a very long time. And like, he's in it to win it. And she's meanwhile like, whatever. We're going to go with the flow and see what happens. When someone says we're both in different places, how can that possibly ever work out? You clearly are in different places. Okay? Clearly in different places. Crystal says Karen and Chantel didn't go hard on Megan because I think they could tell it wasn't going to go to last. And Raydella says they have time to go after Megan. I know, but I just thought they were going to do it. Like, think about and Jeanette. Think about Pedro. Like, they weren't messing around. They went in hard immediately. This was more like, we're not really interested. Like, as soon as they looked at her and she sat down, it was almost a wrap. And then for Chantel, who's the biggest busybody of them all, she was like, okay, I gotta go. I have places to go and people to see. I was like, what's happening? I don't know about y'all, but I was shocked. I was shocked by that. I just did not think it was going to go that way, but it did. Chantel, thinks River likes Megan more than she likes him, which is facts. And the only thing that Karen said was like, we're a family, we're protective of each other. And so we're in each other's business. Like, know that about our family. Megan even says, they didn't seem really interested in getting to know me. And it's true because even in the car ride back, after they left, like after what? That scene was 5 minutes, you guys. They had milkshakes. It looked like they had a little bit of food. All the food was left on the table and they were like, we're out of here. And in the car, the only thing that Karen said was, oh, she's pretty. And then River had to ask Chantel what she thought. And Chantel thought, is this going to work out? Because, it's long distance. And River's like, it's long distance. What are you talking about? She's 4 hours away. We're a family that has overseas relationships, which is facts. All of them. So 4 hours is not like, an 18-hour flight where you're flying to the Philippines. It's 4 hours away. So I don't think that that's going to be the issue. And I just thought it was weird that that's all they had to say. Like, they didn't even have anything to say outside of Megan. It was weird. I don't know. But I think that whoever said it, I agree. I think they realize that this is not going anywhere. So they're not going to invest their time or energy in it because they're not buying that this is a thing. And I agree, especially when she said, we're in different places in our lives. Why are we wasting time then? Really, you're wasting his time and you're wasting your time if you're not in the same places in your life. Where we're 24 now, she's 29 now. It could work. I mean, look at Jenny and Sumit. They're like 100 years apart and they made it work. So age is not what it is. It's a matter of where you are in your life and if you want to be on the same journey at the same time. You guys, I just said that they were 100 years apart. That is so rude. Okay. And I'm back. So then they go to the DR and they're going to go to the campo to visit grandmas. And Pedro just really wants to heal his family and he wants the fighting to stop and all of that. I know, Myra. I'm sorry. I'm a mess. I'm a mess. Sometimes some things come out of my mouth that should have been a thought, but they fly out of my mouth before I kept them. And that was one of those times. One of the times, you guys, I'll tell you a crazy story. So, side note, of this job consulting, it's a couple of consultants, and there's one girl who we were like friends, but she was more like a frenemy. Do you know what I mean? Like she was super nice to me, but I knew that she didn't really like me. But we had to work together day in, day out, and we were consulting together. So like there's no way we could not get away from each other. Anyways, one day we had this class that we were teaching. Class was over, we were cleaning up, and she was asking me a question about something, and then she kept asking me, right? And I kept saying the same thing, and it was irritating me. Now, in my head, you guys, in my head, I was like, this bitch. But guess what? Just like what just happened earlier, it flew out of my mouth. And she turned to me and said, "Did you just call me a bitch?" And I started laughing. And I was like, was that out loud? She said, yes, it was. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But then we both started laughing because, you know what I mean? You don't do that in the workplace. However, that did happen. So back to the drive to Campo to go see Grandmama. Oh, Linda. Oh, Linda. So we're on route to Campo to Grandma. Let me get my thoughts together. And Pedro's driving, and he's trying to have a conversation with Nicole, like, "Hey, Nicole, you feeling better today? Or are we on good terms?" He's trying to make up with her. And she's like, "Just leave me alone." And so then instead of talking to Nicole, he's going to try to have a conversation with Lydia. So Pedro's like, you never told me anything about my dad. So I'm going to ask Grandma when we get there. And then Nicole says, "Oh, Mom plays the dumb about that topic." And Lydia's like, "Well, what's there to talk about?" "Well, there's a whole other family to talk about, that we got dumped. He was never there for us. No holidays, no sports, no graduation, nothing. And, we are considered these bastard children." And Lydia's like, "Bastards don't have a last name." And then that totally upset Nicole, because Lydia's like, "You guys should be grateful that at least you have a last name and at least you were born." And Nicole went crazy. She's like, "Oh my God, so I have a last name. Bravo, that's awesome. Who cares?" Right? Now, this was the first point, in my opinion, where Lydia was on the defense, and I think that she should have just sat and listened to her children, because even though Nicole was going crazy in the back getting super upset by what her mom was saying, you could tell that was coming from a place of pain. And Lydia, to me, in that moment, was being 100% selfish and thinking only about herself and not thinking about her kids and their emotional needs. Okay. So then she's like, Be grateful at least you were born. And then Pedro's like, grateful for nothing. For what? For the trauma that we had, for that childhood that we had, and for the fact that there was never food. There were times that you didn't eat and we had to share one plate of food. We should be thankful for all of that. And Lydia's like, well, you know what? He told me that he was single. And then, I had Pedro. And then he told me that he had 3 other kids and that he was separated. Then months later, he's like, oh, I went back to my wife. And they're like, but then you still decided to have another child. And she's like, yeah, because I didn't want to have 2 baby daddies. So yeah, I had another kid. And she didn't feel bad about it. And then Pedro's like, well, what you're saying right now, something doesn't add up. And Lydia's like, stop bothering me. Again, diminishing the fact that these 2 are asking you questions, and serious questions about who they fundamentally are as people. And you're saying that they're bothering you and to stop bothering you. Like, why would you do that? Do you know how much trauma that they're holding inside? And if you want to think about the relationships that are going on, let's think about the relationship that Nicole's in. Nicole's in a relationship with someone that is emotionally unavailable and is already married because guess what? Look at who her role models were. Her role models are women that have not opened up about many things and have accepted the fact that it's not necessary to be 100% in with someone, that they can have the scraps and they should be grateful to have the scraps. And then look at Pedro, who is now in a healthy relationship, but look at all the drama that he had to go through. And now he's trying to find out who he is as a man. And he's trying to have values and morals and beliefs and standards as he grows older and wants to have his own family. And you're dismissing it. You're dismissing it. This man wants to know who his dad is because guess what? He's at an age where he probably wants to start thinking about children. And he doesn't know anything about his own father. He doesn't know anything about half brothers and cousins, all on his dad's side. And here you are, the mother, sitting right beside them, and you don't want to give them any answers, and you want to say, stop bothering me. Selfish, you guys. Selfish. Lydia goes on to say that they need to accept life as it is. She sees no issues here. She feels like she's done nothing wrong. Bad times come for everyone, and everyone has to go through them. They are what they are, and you go through them, and it is what it is. Again, minimizing what Nicole and Pedro are trying to explain to her. C. Cruz says she was minimizing their pain. She never dealt with her own trauma, but she was cold. And Ray Della says Lydia was heartless. And Patty's like, thumbs down. Yeah, she was heartless. Like, it was hard to watch. It was very, very sad. So Lydia goes on to say, you know what? It is what it is. And even if we didn't have, no one is responsible for the mistakes of others, meaning she's not responsible for any of it. She basically is saying, I don't give a rat's ass how you guys feel, what you guys think. I'm not responsible for it. And it is what it is. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you're trying to get a few answers and this is what you're being told? It is what it is. Life throws you lemons, make lemonade. There's no issue here. I've done nothing wrong. I'm not culpable. I'm not responsible. It is what it is. Meanwhile, Nicole starts crying in the back. Okay. Pedro's like, I'm not going to say anything else. And you can see how sad he is and the pain that he's carrying in his face and the trauma. Because guess what? They had no dad. They don't know who their dad is. Nicole said, I don't even know when his birthday is. So you can imagine all the birthdays that she probably was growing up. And you know what? As kids can be ruthless. Like you think about like daddy-daughter dances. You think about on the playground, dad's coming to pick you up, and kids are like, "Where's your?" And it's very innocent, but they're like, "Where's your dad? Where's your dad?" And you don't have an answer for that because you don't even know who he is. It's traumatic, and then year after year after year after year, that builds up, and you finally are an adult, and you're trying to get some answers, and your mom's like, "I don't see any issues here." Wow. So it's silent in the car. Lydia digs the knife in a little deeper by saying, "Oh, you two are emotional today." Lydia, what? So Pedro is like, he believes that his mom is suppressing a lot of her own issues and her own trauma, as well as he couldn't believe how cold she was being. Like, he just couldn't believe it. He feels like he's been bamboozled this whole time. He is now seeing his mom through a different lens. And that is also hurting his feelings because, he kept his mom on a pedestal for so long, and now he's seeing a completely different side of her, and I don't think he likes it. So they get to the house. There's greetings with Grandma Ilnalda, and his cousins are there. An aunt is there, and they're eating. The food looked delicious, by the way. The chicken soup and avocado, yum. Aunt asks Nicole about her boyfriend, and that just sets off this whole next chain of events. So, how's the boyfriend? Alejandro, he's good. And then the mom's like, he's not good. And then the aunt's like, well, is he a good man? Lydia's like, no, he's married. And then Nicole's like, well, was our dad single? And then Lydia's like, well, that doesn't matter. And it just was like a shitstorm from there. So they try to bring Grandma into it. Grandma immediately's like, I want to stay out of it. And Pedro's not allowing her to stay out of it. He's like, okay, but what if this guy has a wife, a girlfriend, is flirting with other people? Is that okay? And Grandma's like, love is crazy. Makes you drunk and you fall in love with anyone. And while she's saying that, she's saying it mad. Like, to her, it's not a big deal. Love is love to her. Whoever you love, it's going to make you crazy. You're going to make crazy decisions. You're going to do whatever it is that you want to do because you love that person, which is not the answer that Pedro was expecting at all. And so Pedro's like, well, what if this guy, Alejandro, is like a terrible guy? And Grandma's like, you know what? If we don't like him and she likes him, then that's it. There's nothing much more we can do. Which is true, right? It's true. Like, people are going to be with who they want to be with, I suppose. But then it gets dirty because Pedro can't understand that. He's like, no, this guy is no good. He's married. He's got a girlfriend. He's talking to other women online. And then he turns and calls Nicole a slut and says that she'll just have sex with anyone. And then says she should be ashamed. Now, so Nicole freaks out, can't believe that Pedro said that. He's crossing a line. He's being disrespectful. And then, like, there's some chair throwing back and forth. Grandma's slamming the table, saying, stop it. You guys are acting shameful for fighting in front of Grandma, which is true because if you guys remember last season, she was not well and they visited her and she was not well. And so, like let's not bring grandmama's, abuela's blood pressure up. Like, let's just be chill, right? So Nicole feels disrespected, and Pedro's like, okay, I'm going to leave Nicole alone for a minute. I'm going to go back to Grandma, and I'm going to ask about how Lydia, his mom, met Pedro Sr. So Grandma says that apparently Lydia was walking home from school. Pedro Sr. just happened to be in the area. He saw her and boom, instantly fell in love with her. And then he would come and visit with gifts and packages. And Pedro's like, so you were a gold digger? And Lydia's like, yeah, if we needed something, he would get it. And Grandma's like, yeah, he said, don't ever worry for anything. Anything you need, I will provide it for you. And Pedro's like, well, what did you do when you found out he was married? And Grandma's like, well, at that point, there was nothing left to do. And this, to me, you guys, was a huge turning point. And it's a huge turning point because it says a lot about where they are. So it's okay for the person to be married as long as they're financially providing for you. Then that's okay. It's huge, right? And we'll get to it as well, but it's huge because Mama Karen called it from day one. Chantel called it because Mama Karen called it, saying that your family are users and they're using us for the American dollar. Do you remember that, you guys? Turns out Mama Karen was right, and all the flack that Mama Karen was getting because she was saying how, you know, they're using her for the American dollar. Well, I got to tell you that there's a lot going on here. There's so many layers to this. So Mama Karen was not far off on that. The other thing that is important for us to all remember as well, you guys, is the fact that in all of this, Pedro was considered, you know, the male of the house in Lydia's mind. And Lydia still thinks that way. And that's why when Pedro is abroad in America, he's expected to send money and take care of his mother. And she thinks that that's okay. Now, if you look at the whole grand scheme of things on why Lydia decided to have children and having a male first, and then not only in Latin cultures and African cultures and many cultures is like that, like having a boy, that boy has to then take care of everything when the family is older. And especially when the mom is older, it's expected. And then especially if the mom is a single mother, right? And so that is a whole lot of pressure on one person. And so you wonder why Pedro is questioning who he is and who his mom is in all of this. It's a lot of pressure because the mom thinks, hey, you know what? As long as you are a man and you give me money, it's good. And it doesn't matter who the man is. You can be my son. You can be my lover. You can be, you know, my adulterous affair. It doesn't matter as long as you're providing for me. And what does that say about her? And what does that say about the man that she has raised, who's trying to do it a different way, who's trying to literally break generational curses? Because we find out that grandfather, meaning grandma and grandpa, that's the same. They had the same situation. Great grandfather, same situation. Lydia, same situation. Auntie, same situation. And now Nicole is getting into the same situation where you're going to be with a married man. You're going to have kids, and it should be okay as long as the man is providing financially. It's terrible. So that's what they said. Grandfather is like that. Great grandfather is like that. You're all like that. And Lydia's like, so what? It's a cycle. So what? It's a cycle. Lydia, what? It's not so what. It's what? Let's deal with this. Let's deal with the trauma. Let's break the cycle. Let's break the generational curse of terrible behavior, inappropriate behavior, because you're not only hurting your own family and your own children. Guess what? There is a spouse out there that is equally as hurt because she also has to deal with all of this that she didn't ask for. So then Lydia goes on to say, what's the problem? And he's like, Pedro's like, the problem is that you guys look for married men. You look for married men. That's a problem. And then Lydia's like, well, if that's the opportunity, what can you do? Dominican culture is like that, she says. And she's like, you know, a man is not loyal to just one woman. And then his aunt asks, Pedro, are you loyal? Yes, he is loyal to one woman, he says. I'm trying to have values. I'm trying to live my life as a proper man, he says. And he's like brokenhearted. He feels bullied by them. He walks away. He's like, and he starts crying. He's like, I'm just trying to be a good man. What happened to like fighting for the love of your life and fighting for love and loving one person and honoring that person and cherishing that person? He's like, what happened to that? What happened to values? He literally said, I don't know who I am, because he's looking at his family like, how did I come from these people when I'm trying to be a different type of way, and they're literally bullying me and making fun of me and trying to encourage him. Can you imagine? They're trying to encourage him to be a cheater and laughing at him that he's not. What kind of upside down crazy world are we living in, you guys? Like, seriously. And it's not, I want to stress that it's not only the Dominican culture, it is culture in general. I think Crystal, I was having this conversation with Crystal about how even in today's terms, if you think about it, people aren't like, how's your wife, or how's your husband, how's your spouse, how's your partner? They're like, how's your baby mama? How many baby mamas do you have? And many people have multiple baby mamas. Many people have multiple baby daddies. And it's just like, oh, it is what it is. Like, how did we get there? And how is that the okay thing to do? How is that the in thing to do? Because, again, you're free to make your own decisions, obviously. But I think that as a whole, as a society, as a community, we have to think about what it does to our children and the effects that it has on the children. Because guess what? There will always be a day that the child will ask for the other parent, because they want to know who they are, where they're from, how did they get here, what qualities and traits are they getting from this person that they've never met. So there are consequences to this like whole laissez-faire, just whatever, I'm going to have babies by whoever, and it doesn't matter. It does matter, because guess who it matters to the most? Those babies when they grow up and they have questions. So Pedro's brokenhearted. He's crying. He doesn't know who he is. And I just felt for him, you guys. I felt for him because he's not the only person that's in that situation where you want to know and be accepted by a parent and you don't know who the parent is. And you have questions and your questions are not being answered. It breaks people and it creates trauma. And trauma is real, you guys. And trauma can show up in different ways, right? So it can show up physically in your body. It can show up emotionally in how you treat people, and not just in romantic relationships, in how you treat people in general. That's why, starting to have the conversations about mental health, and it should be something that we all talk about freely, because you know what? You don't know what trauma people are carrying. And oftentimes, here it is, and it's deep rooted, and it's somewhere in the family, and that person's trying to talk about it while someone else is trying to minimize it. It's crazy. Anyway, something to think about. Then we go back to Atlanta, and this just blew me out of the water, you guys. Blew me out of the water. So last week, John and Winter were engaged, had the whole escape room engagement, which you guys already know how I felt about it. And then this week, they had a huge fight. Winter was asked to leave by John, leave the house, take all her stuff, pack it all her shit up and go. So Thomas and River went to pick her up and all her stuff. And she's heartbroken because, remember, she's been with this guy for 7 years and she's young, right? So a lot of how she's developed has been with this man, right? So it's shaped who she is as a person. which I really think is important also to remember. So they break up. She was embarrassed. She didn't even know if she wanted to come back to the house. So she was like sitting in her car with all her stuff, not knowing what to do. Because it would be embarrassing. Last week I'm telling you I'm engaged. This week he's my fiance, air quotes, is kicking me out of the house. And she's just really upset because the time and energy she's put into a relationship, the things that she's put up with, and how she's tried to always just make it a happy situation. Last season we found out that there was a whole kid that Jaw was keeping from her for their entire relationship. She's raised his daughter, and he's trying to use that against her as well. And then to top it all off, he asked her how she would feel about if she had a daughter and the daughter was in a polygamous relationship, which is a super passive aggressive way to ask her, if I wanted to be in a polyamorous relationship, an open relationship, like what would you feel about that? Can you imagine? You've been with this guy, committed to this guy for 7 years, and all of a sudden he's trying to tell you as soon as he's proposed to you that, oh, by the way, I might want to have like another wife. Preposterous. So then he's like, you know what? They fight a little bit more. She didn't like how we was talking to him. He's like, you're not bound here. You can leave. And so that's what she did. We also find out that there's a lot of sexism going on in the relationship, and talking about, because they're not married, right? And I'm not having that conversation because there is a dynamic in marriage and all of that stuff and biblical, and I totally get it and blah blah blah. But he wanted her in this moment, playing husband and wife, to be the submissive. He wants to talk about what the women's duties are and her role in the relationship and the roles that she should be taking in the relationship and all of that, right? So trying to control her. And even River's like, only weak men talk about roles all the time because they are trying to control you, which I absolutely agree with, especially if that's only your boyfriend and that's not even your husband. Like, let's cut that out immediately. That's why I always say it's important, you guys, to have those conversations. Don't be 7 years deep in, all of a sudden engaged, and you're now just having those conversations. Those are conversations you had in year one, so that you're not in this place, in this position where this dude thinks he can switch it up because he's molded you and he's molded your feelings, he's molded your emotions to make it feel that you are less than. No. So they ask her if she's finally done with Josh. She says yes. And even Thomas is like, we were trying to keep an open mind with Job, but there are things that raised alarms for us. And so we're happy that she's finally done. And the part that got me, y'all, and I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but the part where he wants to be called Lord, King, Lord. What? I'm going to tell you a true story. This happened, years ago now. So I was doing an event in New York City at that job. Same job, by the way, you guys. But we were in New York this time and not in Vegas. And it was a huge event. Huge. And I was backstage with... I just got this pain in my chest out of nowhere because I'm about to tell you that it's like full circle. So I'm backstage. I'm losing my words here, so give me 1 second to tell you this story because I just gotta look real quick. Okay, so backstage, it's a bunch of speakers, different like high profile speakers, like Anderson Cooper was there, a bunch of people. So Maya Angelou was one of the speakers. This is before she passed. Rest in peace. She's amazing. So I was helping her from the green room to the stage, and she was sitting, and I went to kneel down to talk to her, like, so that we can be eye to eye. And she grabbed my hand, and I'll never forget this. She said, you should never kneel to anyone or for anyone, because no one is above you and no one should think that you are below them. Everyone is equal. The only person that you should ever kneel to is the Lord God, our Savior. And she grabbed my hand and she like helped me stand up again. And we had an amazing conversation. There was more said, but the gist of that whole story is back to Jah saying, "Call me Lord." No person, man, woman, child, is your Lord. Whatever you believe or don't believe, that's on you. I believe in God, but there's no one that is greater than God. And even if you're a non believer, there's no one that's better than you. Okay. We are all 100% equal in this world. And so don't ever let anyone in a relationship or otherwise make you think that, because it's not true. And so you should not ever bow down to someone for no reason. It makes no sense. And you have to think about, why did that person want you to bow down to them and call them Lord? That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. So back to the Dominican Republic. Pedro's still pissed off at his mom. She thinks that she can make things better by making breakfast. He's like, I don't eat breakfast. Okay, Pedro, calm down. But he's just really feeling frustrated with his mom. And he's like, he feels like his mother doesn't care about his feelings. And, you know, he's now even questioned whether hating his dad is something that he should do. Like, maybe there's no reason to hate the dad, because maybe the dad hasn't done anything wrong. Maybe this whole time it's his mom who's been lying to him his whole life. He doesn't know. He's very confused and he's very frustrated. Lydia, again, doesn't think that there's anything wrong. And he's like, well, how can you not think that there's anything wrong? Do you have no values? He's like, Nicole has learned from you. You learned from grandma. And that's why she's with Alejandro, because there are no values placed here. And then here's the thing that's the kicker, you guys. He's like, if Alejandro had money, would it be acceptable? And would he be accepted? Would you accept Alejandro if he had money? And Lydia says yes. Mind blown, right? So he calls her selfish. She's like, you know, you need to let it go. You need to have respect for your mother, because I am your mother. Here I am making breakfast for you. I'm your mother. And his mind is blown, because he's now seen his mother in a new light, right? For being a gold digger, being a user. So this person's not good enough for you, but if they have money, then they're good enough for you, because they're going to give you that money. And oh, by the way, back to what I was saying, that Pedro even has to give her money. So in her mindset, anyone that's giving her money, then they're okay. Doesn't matter how they treat you. Doesn't matter what they do. As long as they're financially providing or providing gifts, things, then she's cool with you. Mind blown. Okay. Mind blown. Calls her selfish. She's like, let it go. And he's like, you know, so you marry someone and then you take advantage of them. Is that what you're saying this family does? Because that's what it looks like everyone has done. They've married that person, or they've been with this person, or they've cheated with this person, and then they've taken advantage. Is that what we're doing here? He's asking. And then the producer asks about Chantel's family. And then, you know, from day one, Chantel's family said that he and they were using him and there was usury. What did he think? And you could see that his heart broke. And he's like, maybe that's true. Maybe I am a user, because now he's confused on who he is. And again, I have to tell you that back then, everyone hated Mama Karen, but she called it. And fast forward to season 3, and all these things that Mama Karen was saying were true. She saw it from afar. terrible. So Pedro's all sad. There's so many like layers to this that I'm just scratching the surface of what they touched upon. Um, but we head over to Atlanta. Chantel has come over to the house because she heard that Winter and Ja broke up. And this is where she tells Chantel about him wanting her to be submissive, to call him Lord, and to be obedient. And he's referencing the Bible to her and saying, just like Sarah called Abraham Lord, that Winter should call him Lord. And Winter's like, we weren't even married yet. He wasn't doing the things equal to being a good man nor being a good husband. So he didn't deserve to be called Lord or what he wanted to be called, or king. So she tells Chantel that, she realized that she didn't deserve this treatment. And so she's done and she left. And Chantel just really wants to help her heal and help her meet other people and realize that she doesn't need to be talked to any type of way and that she deserves much better. And all of a sudden, Josh shows up at the house. He texts Winter, and Winter starts crying because you got to also remember she's really young and she spent 7 years with this guy. And in that 7 years, he's molded her to be the type of person he wants. And a lot of that has to do with control. And if you think about it, she had a lot of that makes sense to me right now, distancing her from her family, and she is taking up his lifestyle. She is being silent. Remember, I talked about why is she always silent against her family and not sticking up for a job, but maybe there's something going on behind closed doors that we don't talk about. And I dare even say, even self-esteem issues, you guys, and how she sees herself, I think that's all a part of it. Because if you look at her present day, she looks totally different. Now that she's left him, she looks totally different. So I do think that grooming and molding affected her emotionally as well. So she starts crying. She doesn't want to have a bad situation with her family, she says. And she's scared because she's emotional. She's a fragile state. She's been with this guy for so many years and she's trying to walk away. And anyone that's been through a breakup after a long-term relationship knows that it's a hard place to be in, right? Because you're so used to being with this person and all of a sudden you're not with that person. There's a definite healing that has to go on. Crystal said, side note, River and Thomas made me want to have a robe. Crystal, do you remember? And Ray Della, do you guys remember when River was on our show and he was in a robe, and it was the same robe he was wearing that says River. That same burgundy robe was the same robe. Do you remember we talked about that? That's funny. And I said the same thing when he was on our show. I was like, oh, that's making me want to have a robe too. So John wants to talk to Winter. He wants her to come out. He's sitting in the car, wants to have a face-to-face. And I thought this was great that all her family surrounded her. She put him on speakerphone and was like, what? You kicked me out of the house? You told me that you're now looking for a new wife. You said that, I should take all my stuff. I should get my car off the insurance, and the list goes on. And so what? And he's like, oh, I just want closure. She's like, this is your closure. I'm not coming out there. I'm done with this. I'm not going backward. And then he's like, oh, I don't want to end the relationship. Just come out. And she's like, no. Click. She hangs up the phone and then she starts crying. And River's like, he just wants his nanny back, which is true because you know what? All the things that she did for him, all those things are not going to be available to him anymore. And he's now starting to realize that. And it's a little too late. What are you guys saying in the live chat here? Faith is like, Lydia is trash. And Raydella said, it was heartwarming to see Chantel support her sister. And Patty said, horrible mentality. Can a sex offender be with Nicole if he had some coin? That's terrible. And Vivian, hey Vivian. Vivian said, Pedro is hurting. Yeah, you guys. There were a lot of layers, absolutely a lot of layers to this episode, but both episodes I thought were fantastic. I thought they were engaging and totally different than, some of the other spinoffs that we've been watching. They're really getting to some of the issues, and I just think that they're hitting a stride and hitting issues that are even important to us and having us have the discussions that we're having like today. So I love it. I love it. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much. It was a great show. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Support the show, as I keep saying. And I'll see you guys all tomorrow for the single life that we're also catching up on. And love you guys. Here's my heart. I don't know how to do them, but you know what I mean. Bye. See you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place.